Hello students, my name is Srinivas Shennai and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. So today we are here to discuss on mechatronics, that is we'll be going through module 3, the second part of the third module, which is integration. So going through the contents of the video, we will first look into the introduction and then we'll look at the background of integration, and then we shall go into industrial robots. We'll look into what exactly is an industrial robot, what are the different parts of a robot, the controller, the drive, arm and end effectors, what are the various sensors which are used in robots and their functional requirements, the advantages, disadvantages and application of robots, and then finally we'll look into advanced actuators. So coming to the introduction part, so what exactly is integration? So integration is a process of incorporation of methods, tools, subsystems and ideas in an optimized manner. So all these incorporation of tools or methods or subsystems or an idea in an optimized manner into a system is called as integration. Now the knowledge gained so far on sensors or transducers or PLCs or actuators has to be implemented. Now it's not just sufficient if you have a knowledge about sensors or transducers or PLCs. You need to implement these things into something. So systematically implementing all these things in an optimized manner with the help of a software or a hardware or a tool or using different methods and techniques is called as integration. So basically all these knowledge that we have gained by learning about sensors, transducers, PLCs and actuators, they just need to be implemented into a system in an optimized manner. So implementing these things into a system itself is called as integration. So before going into the introduction of robotics, I would like to show you a small image here. You can see an image which is shown on the screen. Now if you observe, this is nothing but an assembly line. This is a Ford motor assembly line which was probably taken 100 years back. This photo is probably taken 100 years back, where you can see all the vehicles are lined up here in line on the assembly shop or the car manufacturing plant, and you can see all the workers who are coming to the cars and they're doing the assembly process or they are building this cars. And you can see here there are various parts which are kept on top of the counter, and individual workers are picking up some parts from beneath and they are doing the assembly process, and once the assembly process is complete, the part is shifted to the next person, and the next person will take up the part, he will do some assembly work there and he will shift the part to the next person. So this is how factory used to do assembly of cars probably 100 years back. And now in the 21st century, if you look at the factory looks something like this. So this is the Ford Motor assembly plant which is available right now, and this is probably in the Chennai plant. So you can see the difference between the previous photo and this photo. In the previous photo you had seen lot of workers compared to the vehicles, whereas here now you can see more number of robots. So you can literally see that the robots have completely overtaken or they have replaced the human workers or the manual laborers. So you can see that the workers are very less and robots are more, and everything is automated here. This car will come into the assembly plant from one end and a completed car will come out of the other end of the plant with minimum human intervention. So you can see that the human interference is very minimum here, and almost all the work is carried out by the robots in this particular process. So this is how you can see that the technology has changed maybe in the past 100 years. Automation has completely overtaken the manual working process. So that is why it becomes very important to understand or learn this concept of automation and robotics. So now let us look at the introduction to robotics. So if you look at the definition of robots, robot is defined as, or an industrial robot is defined as a programmable multifunctional device which is designed to move materials, parts, tools or special devices through variable programmed motions for performing a variety of tasks. So This industrial robot is also called as a programmable device. The reason being, we can write programs and feed it into the robotic system. Plus, it is also called as a multifunctional device because it can carry out multiple functions. Now, if you compare a robot with a human being, probably a human being can do one particular task at a time, but a robot can do multiple functions at a time. So a robot is also called as a multifunctional device, and it is also called as a programmable device because it can be programmed. So basically a robot is a programmable multifunctional device, and this device is designed to either move the parts or move some materials or use some tools in order to do some work, or some special devices through variable programmed motion. You need to write a program and feed the program in the robot, and you need to give a specific motion to the robot with the help of these programs. So in order to perform varieties of tasks, you can write programs and feed it into the system, and that is how you give programmed motion to the robots. So this word robot was first invented by this person Karel Capek in the year 1920, and the robot was initially called as robota. It's a Czech word which represents a worker or a servant. It was initially called as robota, and then over time it was developed into what is called right now as a robot. So what makes a machine a robot? So if you observe, there are basically three things in a robot. One is the input, which is nothing but the sensing part. The second is the process, which is nothing but the planning part, and the third is the output, in which the robot does the action. Now if we look at these three things that build a robot, let's look at it with the help of an example. So if you observe here, there is a backhoe loader which is used for digging up of sand and gravel and then put it into a truck. So the first sensing part of a robot, or sensing part of a machine, will sense where exactly that this backhoe loader will dig. So once it digs a particular part, it should first decide where it has to dig, and then it has to decide where the truck is there, where the truck is waiting for the sand and gravel to be put. So that is coming under the sensing part. And the next comes the planning part of the process. So in the planning part of the process, the actual process happens. The backhoe loader will actually dig the sand and the gravel or the mud which is there. So that comes under the process. And then finally the action or the output, wherein the backhoe loader will remove the sand or the mud and put it into the truck. So basically what is happening here is the information about the environment is being taken by this machine, and then the action is done on the environment. So basically two things are happening here. First, the information regarding the environment is sensed by this machine, and then the same action is taken on the environment by the machine. So what makes a machine a robot is this sensing part, the processing part, and the acting part or the output part put up all together becomes a robot. Now if the sensing part is not there, or if the action part is not there, it will just become a machine, or it will not become a complete robot. But if you incorporate a sensor and make it sense the external environment, then it becomes a robot. So moving further, let us look at the parts of a robot. So if you observe, the robot system consists of the following elements. The first major part of a robotic system is a manipulator. So manipulator is nothing but the main body of the robot, and it consists of links, joints and structural elements of the robot. The next part is the end effector or the gripper, and this gripper is nothing but the part which handles objects or makes the connections with other machines, or it does the required tasks. So anything which does the required task or performs a specific task, or that handles the objects or materials, is called as an end effector or a gripper. Anything which grips the part is called as an end effector or a gripper. Third main part of a robot is a sensor. So sensors are used to collect information about the internal state of the robot, or to communicate with the outside environment. So this is coming under the sensing part. So whatever external environment is being sensed by the robot, or whatever action is being taken on the external environment, that is done by the sensors. So the next important part is the controller, which receives the data from the computer system and controls the motion of the actuators. So this whole robot is controlled with the help of a controller, and it receives the data from the computer system, and according to the input or the data received from the system, it does the actions, or it sends the signal to the actuators, which will coordinate the motions and the sensory feedback, coordinate the motions with the sensory feedback information, and do the actions on the environment. And then finally we have the actuators. these actuators are the muscles of the manipulators. The common types of actuators are servo motors, stepper motors, pneumatics, or hydraulic cylinders. Now the one which actually gives motion to the robot is nothing but an actuator. So you can have motors which will give you circular motion, you can have pneumatic or hydraulic cylinders which will give you linear motions, or you can have any other actuators which will give motion to the robots. So these are the basic 5 parts of any robotic system. So let's look at individual parts one by one. So if we look at these parts, we'll be basically beginning with the manipulator, or it is also called as the body of the robot. So this manipulator is nothing but the main body of the robot and consists of links, joints and structural elements of the robot. So it is basically used to manipulate materials without direct contact. Now you can imagine a robot as a human being. The body of a human being can be considered as the manipulator. Now if you observe the hands of the human being, of a person, hands are actually used to do work, or maybe to grip some objects or hold some things, but we are not utilizing our body directly in order to do the work. So our body does not directly come in contact with the objects or the work that we are doing. So that is why a manipulator does not come in direct contact with the materials. So only the end effector or the gripper or the robotic arms are used to do the actual work where human beings cannot reach, and a manipulator is just the body which does not come in contact with the actual material. If you look at the structure of a manipulator, looks something like this. So initially this whole robotic system is fixed onto a floor. It is fixed onto the ground, and from the ground we have one of the links which is connected to a shoulder joint. The second link, which is called as the upper arm, is connected to the shoulder joint, and the forearm, which is the third link, which is connected to the elbow portion of the upper arm. And then finally we have the wrist, where where the actual work takes place. So your end effector or the gripper is connected to the wrist of the robot, and that is where the actual work happens. And if you observe this, the shoulder joint, upper arm, or the forearm or the elbow, they do not come into picture when it comes to handling the materials. So materials are handled, or some operation is performed by this robot only at the end of the wrist, where there is the gripper or a tool. So this whole body of the robot does not directly come in contact with the actual work, and that is why it is called as a manipulator. So next part of the robot is an end effector or a gripper. So this is the part that generally handles the objects or makes connections to other machines or performs the required tasks. Now basically there are two types of grippers or end effectors. Now if we have a hand like shape at the end of the wrist of a robot, which is used for gripping an object or holding an object in order to pick an object and place it somewhere else, it is called as a gripper. Or if we use a tool in place of a hand or a gripper, it can be used for various other purposes like welding or painting, and hence it is called as an end effector or a tool. So either these end effectors or grippers can be of two things, or of two types. One is a tool or a gripper for gripping the objects or for material handling. So generally these end effectors and grippers are connected to the end of the wrist. Just like how human beings have their hand which is connected to the wrist, a robot will also have a wrist portion to which the end effector or the gripper is connected. So there are basically two types, as I've told. End effectors are of two types. The first one is a gripper, which is used to grasp or to manipulate the object or to hold the objects and pick them and place them wherever it is needed. And the second type of end effector is a tool, which is used for performing a particular process, for example welding or maybe painting. So if you just remove the gripper from the wrist and attach a tool, it becomes attach a welding tool to a robot, it becomes a welding robot. So if you remove the welding tool from the wrist of the robot and attach a gripper to it, it becomes a pick and place robot. So the configuration of the robot completely depends on the type of end effectors that you use. So without the end effectors, a robot is completely useless and incomplete. It cannot do the required task, because the actual task happens based on the kind of end effector that is fixed to the robot, and not based on the manipulator or the body of the robot. So what defines a robot is what exactly the end effector that is being used in a robot. So if we are using a gripper, it is used to grasp or to hold things. If we are using a tool, it is used to perform a specific task. So these are the two end effectors that are basically present in. So coming to end effectors, Now there are different types of grippers that are available. The first type of gripper is a mechanical gripper, or a friction, or the friction of the gripper retains the object. In mechanical grippers, the friction between the object and the gripper is what maintains the grip between the objects. The second type of end effectors are suction or vacuum grippers, where we use vacuum pumps in order to hold some delicate objects. The third type of gripper is a magnetic gripper, where we use magnets in order to hold magnetic parts or objects. Ferrous, most of the time if we are handling ferrous materials which get attracted by magnets, we can use a magnetic gripper. The next one is a hook, which is used to lift parts and move them. So basically a hook which is there on a crane can also be considered as an end effector in order to pick the parts. The last one is a scoop or ladles, which are used for handling pellets or powders or fluids or maybe molten metals or some granular particles which can be poured into something or can be transferred from one place to another. Scoops or ladders or even buckets can be used in order to handle high temperature metals or maybe powders or fluids. So these are the different kinds of end effectors that are being used. So if you look at the mechanical gripper designs, so these are basically the different types of designs which are available. We have the mechanical pivot action type of gripper, wherein these two arms of the gripper, they come towards each other and they grip the object in between. So similarly, a sliding action gripper is also available, wherein we have slots like this, and these gripper arms will slide in these slots and they come together and grip the object which is kept in between them. Then we have a mechanical double gripper, wherein we have two grippers attached to the same arm, and we can handle two objects at the same time. And at the same time we have a fourth variety, which is a vacuum gripper, wherein we use we create a vacuum and we suck the object that is needed to be gripped using a vacuum pump, and we have a cone shaped funnel here which will be used for handling delicate objects. So these are the different types of gripper designs which are so these are the different varieties of grippers that are available. You can see here these are called as scoops or ladles, which are used in backhoe loaders for digging of mud or sand. So this is the actual manipulator body of a robot, and this portion is the wrist portion of the robot where you attach the end effector. So this is a welding gun. So if this welding gun is attached to the end of this robot, it becomes a welding robot. So this welding gun can be considered as a tool. So this is a mechanical gripper, where we have two arms which will grip the objects in between them. This is also another mechanical gripper. This is a gripper which is in the shape of a human hand. So you have fingers here just like human hands, and they grip the objects in between them. So these are some examples of grippers that are used in robots. Next comes the sensors. So once we have now that we have seen about grippers and the different varieties of grippers, now comes the sensors part. So this sensor is one of the most important part of a robot in order to sense the external environment. So basically a sensor is used to collect the information about the internal state of the robot or to communicate with the external environment. Either the internal state of the robot needs to be communicated, or the outside environment needs to be or the information regarding the outside environment needs to be collected. So this is basically the purpose why a sensor is being used. So robots are often equipped with external sensors or sensory devices which such as vision systems or touch or tactile systems, which will help communicate with the external environment. So this robot can very easily communicate with the external world or the external environment with the help of these sensors. So without these sensors, the robot will not be able to communicate with the external people or the external environment, and it becomes difficult for the robot to work. So in order to make the working of a robot easier, it is very much necessary to incorporate a robot with sensors. So before moving on to the different types of sensors which are available, let us see what is meant by sensing. So a device which detects or measures a physical property and records, indicates or otherwise responds to it is called as sensing. So any device which detects or measures a physical property, anything which is there in the external environment, any physical quantity or any physical property which is there in the external environment, if a device is able to detect that particular property or physical property or measure that particular property, and once it measures, if it is able to record and indicate and respond to it, then that particular property is called as a sensing property. So what exactly sensing means? A device which detects or measures a physical property which is there in the external environment, and it then records it or indicates it or represents it and then responds to it. So this is the basic process of what is called as sensing. So in order to do sensing, you need a device which is called as the sensor, and these sensors can be of electrical type, it can be a mechanical sensor, it can be a chemical sensor, it can be any device of these kinds which maps the external environmental attribute to a quantitative measurement. Now whatever is physical quantity is existing in the external environment, that needs to be mapped or that needs to be extracted in order to respond to it, or it needs to be recorded. The external environment needs to be recorded in order to respond to it. So that is why these electrical, mechanical and chemical devices are used to map the external attributes or the environmental attributes, and it converts the external environmental attribute into a quantitative measurement so that it can be properly sensed or it can be properly responded to. And each sensor is based on the transduction principle. So basically one form of energy is converted to another form, and the sensing happens, and then that sensed information is represented in terms of quantitatively, or it is quantitatively represented, or it is measured. So based on that, each sensor is based on the transduction principle, and energy conversion happens from one form to the other. So hence these sensors are also called as transducers. Since transduction principle is used, they are also known as transducers. Now why do robot need sensors? Why does a robot need a sensor? Is it mandatory, or is it compulsory that a robot should need a sensor, or will a robot work without a sensor? Now you can take this example. Now we have a robotic arm here. Now there may be some objects here which needs to be worked upon or which needs to be sensed. Now without knowing the angle of this arm, angle of this arm and this arm, the angle between these two arms, the robot will not know where exactly to reach and pick the object or work on the object. So this robot should know what is the internal information or the internal angle between these two arms. This is not the external environment, this is sensing of the internal environment. The robotic arm's angle itself need to be sensed in order to understand where exactly this arm is and where exactly it has to reach. So internal information of the robot also needs to be sensed in order to understand the position of a robot. That is one basic requirement of a sensor, or that is why sensor is needed. There is one more example which is called as localization. Now when a robot is traveling in a shop floor or an assembly line, the robot should know where exactly it is. So the location of the robot also is very important in order to understand where exactly the robot is placed. Now if there is a very big shop floor and the robot has to move from one end of the shop floor to the other end, the robot should first know where is its position. So maybe a GPS tracker can be fitted into a robot, which will give information about the location of the robot and tell the robot where exactly to move. So there may be many places where the robot has to move and deliver some things, or maybe the robot has to go to some other point and do some work. So unless the robot knows where exactly it is positioned, it is very difficult for that robot to move to that particular point. So that is why to sense where exactly this robot is there in the external environment, sensor is needed. Coming to the other example, why robots need sensors. Now there may be different obstacles when the robot is traveling on a shop floor or maybe anywhere. You can consider a industrial robot traveling on a shop floor or an assembly line, or you can consider this example which is shown in the picture here. You can see this trolley or a small vehicle which is traveling on the golf course, and it is an autonomous vehicle where the vehicle is traveling on its own without a driver. So this vehicle should be able to identify an obstacle which is there in front of it. So the moment it sees an obstacle in front of it, it should detect that there is an obstacle in front of it and it should respond accordingly. It should not go and hit that particular object or that obstacle. It has to respond accordingly, and it has to deviate from that particular obstacle and reach to the next point. So in order to detect the external environment also, the robot sensors are very much necessary. The next example why you need sensing for specific tasks is, now you can see this example here. Now we have a crop line here which needs to be harvested, and this is an example of autonomous harvesting. So where exactly do you need to harvest, in which line you need to move this machine, where is the end, or where is the end of this crop line, so where exactly the crops are located, how far this machine has to travel, and once it reaches the end point again it has to turn and return back. So all these sensing things are there in this machine, and then you can try autonomous harvesting with the help of sensors. So one more example, you can see sensing for a specific task. So now we have a forklift here. So in this figure on the right you can see this forklift. So this forklift has two forks which goes into these fork holes. Now you can see this is a part or a component which needs to be lifted, and the forks of these forklift needs to go into these fork holes. So where exactly these fork holes are located, what is the height from the ground, to what extent these forks has to go into these fork holes. So all these parts need to be sensed, and then this forklift has to go and lift this particular part. So for autonomous material handling also we can use. Now this is what everyone knows. We have face detection and tracking device in our cell phones. We almost do this on a daily basis. So you have your cell phone which has a front camera which acts as a sensor in detecting the face. So you just need to feed the data about your face into the camera, and automatically it will read the data which is already fed in the system. The sensor will sense the face and then it will unlock the phone. So phone locking and unlocking features can also be given with the help of a camera sensor. So this is basically used for face detection and tracking. So these were some of the examples where sensors could actually be used. Now if you look at the different types of sensors, so these are some varieties of sensors which are available. You can consider all these sensors, and you can use all these sensors based on the applications. So we'll look at some of the sensors one by one. So coming to the first sensor, which is a touch sensor, it's a very simple switch where you need to apply a force. You have this circuit diagram here. So you need to apply the force from one end. So if you consider a switch in your home, you just need to turn on the switch. So the moment you apply some force or turn on the switch, you can see the contacts here, they are open as of now. The moment you apply force on this, these contacts get closed. The moment the contact gets closed, you have a voltage measuring device which will measure the voltage or the electric flow which is flowing through this contact, and then the final output will be given. So depending on the amount of force that you're giving here on the switch, you will see the voltage measurement and the final output is shown. So a touch sensor works on this principle. Then we have the bend sensor, which is also a variable resistor sensor. So the resistance changes as this sensor bends. So we have this equation V is equal to I into R. So assuming constant current, the measured voltage changes with resistance. Now if we assume that the current is constant, whatever voltage we are measuring, that voltage will go on changing depending on the resistance. So as the resistance changes, the voltage changes. So in case of this sensor, we have a bend sensor. So the moment the resistance changes when this sensor bends, the corresponding voltage will also change. So based on that principle, the final voltage will be changed. Next we have the light sensor, which is a photoresistor. So when the resistance, when the intensity of the light changes, the resistance of this photoresistor changes, and that will give you an output signal. So this sensor is based on the intensity of light. So based on the light intensity, the resistance will change, and that is how you can sense the light. And then we have the temperature sensor, which is also called as a thermistor or a thermal resistor, wherein the resistance changes with a temperature. You have a small device here, so the resistance of this device will change based on the temperature where it is being applied, or based on the application where there is temperature involved. So as the temperature changes, the resistance changes, and that will show you an output signal, and that is how you measure the temperature. And then we have the potentiometer, which is a rotational sensor, and if you observe here, the resistance changes with the position of the dial. You have a dial here, you can see this arrow mark here. So as this dial changes, as the position of this dial changes, the resistance will change, and when the resistance changes, Assuming the current is constant, the corresponding voltage will also change. So that is how potentiometers are used in order to change the or in order to sense things. And then we have sensors based on sound. So based on sound also we can have a sensor called as sonar, which is sound navigation and ranging. So in sonar we have the bounce sound off. Now whatever sound is coming from an object, it will go and hit a particular obstacle and it will bounce back. So once it bounces back, the time is measured for the reflection to be heard. Now imagine an object is making a sound, or a person is making a sound. The sound will travel through the air as sound waves. The sound waves will go and hit an obstacle which is there in front of it, and then the sound waves will bounce back. So this bounced wave which is coming back, the time is measured time for the reflection to be heard. So the wave which is bouncing back and coming back to us, or coming back to this device called as sonar, the time is measured for the bounce to reach back, or for the wave to reach back. So based on that we can give the range measurement. We can tell how far an obstacle is or how far an object is based on the time difference between the emitting of the sound and receiving of the sound. So it measures the change in frequency. It gives the relative speed of the object, which is nothing but the Doppler effect. It changes, or it measures the change in frequency, and that is how you can find the relative speed. And most of the time bats and dolphins use it with amazing results. So some animals have this capability of sensing very minute sounds which human beings cannot sense. So they use it to their advantage when they are in the external environment. So these are the pictures of sonar and rangefinder. So usually these sonars and rangefinders will be there on ships in order to find out the distance between two ships, or maybe between the land and the sea. Now once these sound sensors are done, we have something called as odor sensors, which is based on chemistry. Now detection of chemical compounds and their density in the area. Now if there is any chemical compound, or if there is any harmful chemical which is there, which has a lot of pungent smell, so such chemicals can also be detected with the help of odor sensors. Now this is there are different names given to this. One is called as spectroscopy, which is restricted mostly to the labs. The other is called as fiber optic techniques, which was recently developed, and the other is chemical detection, in which sniffers and electronic noses are used in order to detect odors. Now this is also called as wet chemistry on a chip. The reason why you call wet chemistry on a chip is, now usually we smell something which has a lot of odor, and then we try to sense what that smell is. Similarly, we have wet chemistry. We have a chemical which is mounted on top of a chip, which will sense the odor, and it will tell you what kind of odor it is. So this odor sensors have still not penetrated into the robotics applications yet, but still it has a very vast application in terms of penetrating into the robotic field. Next comes the touch sensors. Now when you come to touch sensors, we have different types called as whiskers or bumpers, and basically the mechanical contact leads to either closing or opening of a switch. Now we have already seen a switch before, or a touch sensor. The moment you apply some force on the switch, the contact will be closed and electricity will flow, and it will show you the voltage. And that is one of the kind. The other kind is change in resistance of some of the elements. So if resistance changes, the voltage will change. If the capacitance changes, the voltage will change, or change in spring tension. If the tension of the spring changes, the output voltage will change. So based on the change in capacitance or spring tension or resistance, or based on the force that is applied on the switch, you can have different kinds of touch sensors. So now that we have looked at sensors, so the next part of the robot is a controller. So what exactly is a controller? A controller receives data from the computer system, and it controls the motions of the actuators. Now a motion is provided to a robot, or the different parts of a robot, with the help of actuators. Now these actuators need to be told how exactly to provide the motion, and that information is sent through the controller, and this controller receives the data from the computer system. based on the sensing that is done by the sensors. Now all the sensors that we have studied till now, or looked till now, these sensors will sense the external environment and give the data to the computer system, and that data is fed into the controller, which in turn will control the actuators, and these actuators will coordinate the motions based on the sensory feedback. So this control system allows for the movement and function of various parts of the robots. So the various parts of the robots are controlled with the help of actuators, and the controlling part is done by the control system. And if there is any unforeseen errors or any other undesired motions that are to be controlled, that can also be controlled with the help of a control system. So basically a controller acts as a brain in the robotic system, which controls the overall motion of the actuators. So coming to the last part of the robot, which is an actuator. These actuators are basically called as the muscles of the manipulators. A robot is also called as a manipulator. So these actuators are, or they serve as muscles of the manipulators. Just like how human beings have muscles in order to do the movement of the various parts of the body, very similarly robots have actuators which will provide motion to the different parts of the robots. Some of the examples of actuators are servo motors, stepper motors, pneumatic or hydraulic cylinders, DC motors, etc. So if you look at pneumatic and hydraulic cylinders, they'll give you linear motion. So the movement of the piston and the cylinder will give you the linear motion. And if you look at the different types of motors which are available, these motors will provide you a circular motion or a rotational motion. So an actuator can produce either a rotational motion or a linear motion. A vast majority of actuators produce either rotational or linear motion. And an actuator is a device which converts energy, which is mostly electrical in the form, into physical motion. So that is the function of an actuator. It converts one form of energy into physical motion, and that motion is provided to the parts of the robots, and that is how we make the robot move, or the different parts of the robots move because of this reason. So that is basically what an actuator is. An actuator is a muscle which will make the robots move. So these are the different parts of the robots that we have seen till now. So coming to advantages of robots. So there are various advantages of using a robots or replacing robots in place of human beings. Some of the advantages are: robotics and automation can in many situations increase productivity. So you can the productivity of the whole assembly process, or the productivity of a whole system can be increased with the help of using robots. It is very safe to use robots. The efficiency of the working of the robot is very high, and the quality of the products and the consistency of the products is also high. So since we are feeding programs into the robotic system, the robots will work based on the program that is fed into the system, and that is why we can expect a very high efficiency and high quality of products, and that is why you get consistent products. There is very less chance for a robot to give a defective part or make mistakes, so that is why consistency of the products is very high. Next advantage is robots can work in hazardous environments. So if there is any dangerous environment, for example welding, or maybe spray painting, or maybe inspection of a nuclear reactor, or maybe going into the chimney and inspecting something, or maybe a power plant, maybe inspecting a boiler, where it is very dangerous for human beings to enter and inspect. In such areas, in such environments, robots can very effectively work for you. Next advantage is robots can work continuously without any humanity needs or illness. So if you compare with the human counterparts, human beings might take some rest in between. Maybe they need to go to the washroom, or maybe they need to have some food, or maybe they'll be tired and they'll take some rest, or maybe they may have some illness and they may need to take rest. So all these problems are rectified in robots. Robots need not take any humanity needs or illness into picture. If you supply electricity to a robot, it will continuously work for you without any break. So that is one major advantage of a robot. Next advantage is robots have repeatable precision at all times. So once you write an accurate program and feed it into the system, the robots will work for you continuously with the same precision again and again. So there is no way a robot can make a mistake unless there is a mistake in the program that is fed into the system. So if a proper program is fed into the robotic system, the robot will give you 100% efficiency and precision at all the times. Greater response time to inputs than human beings. Now if you compare robots and human beings, if there is a specific assembly task that is to be done by a human being, the human being or the worker needs to think about what is to be done, he needs to plan in his mind about what assembly needs to be done, what parts need to go and assemble with which components. All those things need to be thought first, it needs to be planned, and then he has to act upon that and then work with the parts that is available with him. Whereas if you compare this with a robot need not do that thinking process. A robot will be fed with the program, and as soon as the parts are received, directly it will start working on the parts. So the response time of a robot is greater compared to human beings. Human beings need to think what is to be done, and then they have to act, or then they have to work. Whereas as soon as the parts are received, the robot will immediately begin working. So the response time of a robot is more compared to that of humans. That is how robots do the work very quickly, and it saves a lot of time. Robots can process multiple tasks simultaneously, whereas humans can do only one. So human beings, if they are doing a particular task, they will have to do that particular task and only then go to the next task. Whereas robots can have multiple attachments, or we can have multifunctional robots which can simultaneously do more than one task. So that is an added advantage compared to human beings, and work can be done at a faster pace. And since we are writing a program and feeding it into the system, the robot will work with utmost precision and quality, and the consistency of the products are very high. So since an already predefined program is fed into the system, the chances of robot making an accident is very, very less. So the robot will exactly work as per the program that is fed into the system. So that is why the accident reduction in case of robots is very less. Whereas in human beings can make mistakes unknowingly or knowingly. They can make some errors, and that may lead to accidents in the shop floor, or maybe in an assembly line, or maybe wherever they are working. So that accident reduction part is very less when it comes to working with the robots. So using a robot may have a lot of advantages, but at the same time there are equal number of disadvantages as well if you use a robot. So some of the disadvantages we'll be looking here. So one major disadvantage of a robot is initially the robots are costly. So the initial cost of the equipment is very high. The installation cost is also very high. You need to bring that robot, you need to assemble the robot in the shop floor, you need to install it in the shop floor. So the cost of the installation is also coming into picture here, and it is very high. Need for peripherals. So if a robot breaks down, or if there is any malfunction in any of the parts of the robots, then it needs to be replaced, or it needs to be serviced or repaired. So this replacing cost, or servicing cost, or maintenance cost also comes into picture. And since we are using some peripherals or extra parts which are used in a robot, then it will increase the cost. Need for training and programming. It's not sufficient if you just have a robot on the shop floor. You need to train the worker who is working with the robot, or you need to train the person who is working with the robot, and you need to teach him programming as well. So this training and teaching programming part also has some cost which is coming up with it. So that is also an additional cost that the company has to bear in order to have a robot. So basically a robot installation of a robot is costly. Next disadvantage is robots may have limited capabilities in degrees of freedom. Now the robots do not have a great amount of flexibility when it comes to human beings. Human beings can be very flexible in terms of working, and they can have more number of degrees of freedom, whereas robots have limited number of degrees of freedom. That is limited number of movements of the parts, and that is why it cannot be completely utilized to its full extent. So that is one major disadvantage of a robot. And the robot does not have its skill on its own. So whatever program is fed into the system, it will work as per that program, and it does not have its own skill to work. Sensors is another disadvantage of a robot. We cannot say disadvantages, but it is limited. Since we have limited number of sensors, the capability of the robot goes down because of the lesser number of sensors which are available. And one important disadvantage is this robot is not able to respond in real time. Now the program is fed into the system, and it works as per the program. Real time, if there is any response which needs to be immediately done, that cannot be done by the robot. That response cannot be given by the robot in real time. It will work according to the program that is being fed into the system. Another major disadvantage is robots lack capability to respond in emergencies. So if there is any emergency on the assembly line, or the plant, or the shop floor, this robot will not be able to identify it and respond to that in real time. So this may lead to inappropriate or wrong responses. So the robot will continuously work as per the instructions given, and if there is any emergency on the production line, the robot will not stop its work. It will go on working. So it will lead to inappropriate and wrong responses of other machines, and it may also damage the robots and the other devices, the other robots and the other devices which are in there in the plant. It will damage those devices as well, and which may also lead to human injuries. So since this robot does not have a decision making power, a lack of decision making power, it cannot decide things on its own. Whatever program we feed into it, it will work as per that program, and it cannot decide things on its own. So because of this lack of decision making power, it can give you wrong responses, and if there is any emergency, it can damage the other devices and parts which are there in the shop floor or next to that robot, and it can also lead to human injuries. So whatever advantages are there in using a robot, there are equal number of disadvantages as well if you are using a robot. So all these things needs to be taken into consideration before installing or before trying to implement robots in an industry. The application part, robots are widely used nowadays in almost all applications. Major applications are in welding, painting and surface finishing. So any activity which is not good for human beings, such as welding or painting or surface finishing, which are harmful for human beings. Now the chemicals which are used in painting, or maybe the fumes which are coming when you're doing welding, these are harmful for human beings. So these applications can be done with the help of robots, and most widely robots are used for welding, painting and surface finishing. Automotive and aerospace industries also employ robots in order to do the welding process or the assembly process or the manufacturing process, which is very widely used nowadays. Even the electronic microelectronic companies also or consumer product companies also employ robots in order to do light assembly works. If there is any small assembly work that needs to be carried out, or if there is any repetitive task which needs to be carried out in large numbers, so robots can be employed in such cases as well. Inspection of parts, if there is any part that needs to be inspected, if a defective parts need to be rejected, or if accepted parts need to be sent down the line, so for inspecting of the parts also you can use robots. Underwater and space exploration can also be done with the help of robots. So wherever human beings cannot reach, now for example human beings cannot go to the space, or maybe they cannot go to another planet and do some exploration, wherever human beings cannot reach, there you can send robots and make them explore the external environment. So that is also an important area where you can use robots in order to do some exploration work. And finally we have hazardous waste handling. Any chemical or maybe the output of the power plant, or maybe a nuclear waste, or any waste which is dangerous to human beings can be handled with the help of robots. So anything which is dangerous, where human beings cannot directly come in physical contact with all these materials, can be handled with the help of robots, so that it becomes very easy for the robots to handle. At the same time, it is safe for human beings to also stay away from these hazardous waste. So that is also a major application where robots are being utilized. So these are some of the applications that are there for robotics, and this is all I wanted to explain in this particular chapter. Thank you, and all the best.